Let's be completely honest about this Arsenal situation, because the reaction has been nothing short of bewildering. I've watched the takes roll in, and I have to say, I genuinely don't understand the negativity. Framing that Chelsea game as some kind of disaster is a fundamental misreading of the entire context. If we rewind the clock just 1 week and lay out the brutal reality Arsenal faced, a brutal 7-day gauntlet against Tottenham, Bayern Munich and Chelsea. All without your two world-class centre-backs, without your first, second or third choice striker, and with your captain sidelined, and then offered you 2 wins and a draw on a piece of paper to sign, you would have ripped the pen right out of my hand. You would have taken that deal without a single moment of hesitation. So, to see people now trying to spin that Chelsea draw as a negative is an exercise in pure narrative devoid of all logical context. In an ideal world, yes, Arsenal win that game. We all wanted the 3 points. But to hear rival fans, and even some of our own, start with the, "Oh, they couldn't even beat 10-man Chelsea" chatter, is to completely ignore the circumstances of the match and the period as a whole. This wasn't a game in isolation. It was the final, grueling leg of an exhausting sprint through a minefield. The pre-game consensus among reasonable observers was that navigating those 3 fixtures with 6 or 7 points would represent an outstanding return. Arsenal secured 7. That is an objective success. For those waiting for the traditional December stutter, you might want to hold your breath a little longer, because this team's resilience suggests it's not arriving. The frustration from rival fans is palpable and telling. Before the match, the chatter was all about Chelsea being European royalty, about how Arsenal wouldn't handle the occasion at Stamford Bridge. Now, after a draw, the script has flicked to Chelsea being world beaters and title contenders. So which is it? If Chelsea are now this emerging force, then Arsenal going to their ground, falling behind and showing the grit to claw back a point is the hallmark of a champion. It simply cannot be spun both ways. The result, when viewed through the clear lens of the injury crisis and the fixture pile-up, is unequivocally a positive one. Now, diving into the performance itself, the fullest point has to be credit to Chelsea. Their approach was the single most defining feature of the match. What I didn't anticipate was the sheer unrelenting aggression they displayed from the first whistle. Arsenal in recent years have occasionally struggled against teams that employ this kind of in-your-face, physical disruptor tactic. Think of Newcastle in past seasons. Chelsea adopted that blueprint perfectly. They were nasty, they were intense, and they set a tone designed to unsettle. This was epitomised by the early sending off, which stemmed from that very mentality. It's a tough style to play against, though as fans, we've loved having players with that edge in our own team. On the day, Chelsea's aggression earned them their point. Did they deserve to win? Absolutely not. And to the hypotheticals about them winning with 11 men, well, football doesn't work on hypotheticals. They didn't. They got a point, and that's the reality we analyse. Within Arsenal's performance, certain patterns sparked concern. The disciplinary record was alarming. To have both centre-backs booked and the full-back cycling through yellow cards placed the team on a precarious tightrope for large portions of the game. The sequence surrounding the lift-back position was particularly puzzling. The substitution seemed a direct response to the booking, a proactive move to avoid a potential sending off, only for the replacement to immediately find himself in the referee's book. This kind of game management is a delicate art, and on this occasion, it felt like we were constantly flirting with disaster. This leads to a broader talking point about individual contributions. It's important to frame this with patience and perspective, acknowledging the youth and development trajectory of certain players. However, in the high-stakes environment of a title chase, certain standards are non-negotiable. There were moments in transition when Chelsea broke, where the collective effort to recover was visible, except for one player who appeared to be merely jogging. This is especially jarring when that player was involved on the turnover of possession. It's not about personal attacks or harsh labels. It's a simple observation of effort that falls below the baseline required in these fixtures. For a team built on intensity and unity, such moments stand out and understandably cause frustration among supporters. The offensive rhythm was also conspicuously absent for large spells. In the first half, several key players seemed off their usual pace. Possession was conceded cheaply in dangerous areas, which, against a team with Chelsea's transitional speed, is a recipe for trouble. The usual fluency in the final third was missing, with combinations breaking down and decision-making seeming a fraction slow. In this context, one player shone as a beacon of reliability: Declan Rice. His performance was a masterclass in defensive midfield play. There was one tackle in particular, a perfectly timed, lunging intervention where it seemed an attacker had finally escaped his grasp. That encapsulated his value. He is the foundation, the player you can depend on when others are searching for their form. However, a subtle shift occurred with the introduction of Martin Odegaard. While his return didn't produce a moment of magic, it altered the team's posture. He immediately demanded the ball, positioned himself between the lines, and tried to dictate the tempo. He provided a focal point for possession that had been lacking. This was noteworthy precisely because he has faced questions about his ability to grab gains by the scruff of the neck in tough away fixtures. His cameo, while not transformative, was a positive step and a reminder of the technical control he brings, which will be vital in the coming weeks. The officiating, while not a central story, certainly didn't help the flow of the contest. This isn't a case of sour grapes. The result was fair, but the consistency of decision-making was questionable. There were robust challenges from Chelsea that went unpunished, while Arsenal saw players booked for lesser offences. The most egregious example, of course, was the red card incident itself. To see any debate about that decision is baffling. It was a dangerously reckless challenge, the kind that the game is rightly trying to eliminate. The subsequent theatrics from the player involved only compounded the lack of professionalism in the moment. So, where does this leave Arsenal? Still top of the league, with a significant cushion, having navigated one of their toughest weeks of the season with their squad depth stretched to its limit. The narrative anxiety is just noise. The tangible concern is the injury situation, particularly in defence. The drop-off from the first-choice partnership is not catastrophic. The replacements are excellent players. But football at this level is about fine margins. Losing even 5 or 10% of that murchi-burchi, that telepathic understanding and ball-playing composure, is noticeable. You could sense a slight nervousness in build-up against Chelsea's press that simply isn't there when the usual duo plays. Their return cannot come soon enough, especially with another challenging fixture on the horizon. Looking forward, the focus must shift to managing the squad through this period. The upcoming match is one where the attacking talents who were subdued at Stamford Bridge will be expected to fire. More importantly, it's about navigating through to the next international break and hoping for positive news from the treatment room. The core takeaway from this Chelsea match is one of resilience, not regression. It was a test of mentality as much as quality, and taking a point from that cauldron under those circumstances is a sign of strength. The so-called crumble is a myth waiting to be dispelled, and this team, with its points on the board and its spirit intact, looks ready to do exactly that.